Hello, my name is Rachel. I am a mother, a knitter, a crocheter, a teacher, and a wife. And today I wanted to film an episode just to catch everyone up about my current projects, as well as to reflect on the ideas that we have about managing projects and how to deal with some disgruntledness that we may have sometimes towards projects. So if you're interested, please stay tuned to hear about all those wonderful moments happening in my crafting life. And if you like the video that you watch, please like or subscribe. And with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So in my last video, I shared with you all that I had successfully finished my test knit for Veronika Lindberg. I did the beautiful sweater called Stitches. It came out amazing. I love wearing it. It's warm, it's elegant, but it's also fun. I can wear it casual or I can dress it up as well. I've worn that sweater 3 times since completing it. And although the sleeve length isn't exactly the way I want it to be, it still fits very nicely. I think what I will do when I have some more mental energy is do some knitting surgery. I've done it before and I had some success. So now I'm feeling overly confident that I can do it again. But what I'm envisioning is that I probably will cut the way that the sweater falls. I probably cut right before I started to decrease for the cuff, cut along there, do another 4 inches, and then add the cuff band because the bracelet length, it's like right here to hopefully I can insert a picture, but most of the pictures I've taken of myself wearing a sweater, it doesn't show the length of the sweater. But other than that, I absolutely love it. I'm really proud of myself and I'm still feeling excited about doing color work and can't wait for my next project. And so because I had such a positive experience doing that particular sweater, and I did it fairly quickly, I started it because it took forever to pick the yarn. So I did it in about 20 days because she called for a test knit at end of January. And so it was around January 2nd or 3rd. I know it was like in the first week of January that I got the email saying you've been picked. And so I spent a full week trying to decide what colors I was going to use. And I'm so glad I landed on the colors that I did. And I'm so proud of the work that I put into that because I learned so much for that particular project. So when she did a test call out for the oatmeal sweater, I was like, well, I gotta do it. And so with the oatmeal sweater, it's another all over texture sweater. We have beautiful cables, some faux cables, where it's basically just right and left crosses. And it's this really cool stitch pattern that she may have came up with because it's something I've never done before. At first I thought it was a moss stitch, but I've done moss stitch before. And it's definitely not that. So with that particular pattern, the last time I spoke with all of you, I had thought about just using either fingering weight yarn held together. And then I went on to Wool Company, as I mentioned before, and I purchased this beautiful pink yarn. It's 60% cotton, Prima cotton, excuse me, and 40% of rayon. And for every 100 grams, you get 365 yards and about 306 meters. And the yarn in itself, you would get the same gauge as what the pattern calls for, and it's cotton. So I know it's machine washable. And I've done a swatch in this here. I couldn't find the swatch last time, but I finally found it. So I did a swatch for it. And this is the one in the middle. You're supposed to do the swatch of the texture pattern. And I liked it, but I didn't like it. And so I tried different variations. I tried it using fingering held double. I thought that was too thick. I did it with just DK. It was okay. This is the Knitting for Olive. I use the Orchid color and I really like this one. I love the color, but I thought it would be a little too thin, but this one was where I was leaning towards, but if I went with this one, I would have had to buy more yarn. And then finally, I was also considering my double Sunday, well actually this is just Sunday yarn by what is it, Sandus Garn. I was going to use this color because I'm obsessed with this color and I think it would look amazing against my skin. I got that lovely dark chocolate skin, and so I was like, this would be great, but I just didn't like the fabric it made doing a single, nor did I like the fabric it made when doing it double. So I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about doing swatching. I know that for some folks they do it just to see if they would get the same gauge as the designer, to make sure that they're picking the right size. Others will do it for just to test out the yarn. Me personally, I do it for 2 reasons. When I do a gauge swatch, which I will admit I don't do it for every pattern, especially if I'm doing a pattern by a designer I've knitted before, I know that how to get engaged with that particular person. Like with Petite Knit, I'm pretty consistent at getting engaged with her patterns, which is why I don't always work up a swatch. But so for me, when I do a swatch, I will do it if the pattern is calling for a design technique I've never done before. So that's one reason. Or if it's for a person where the garment is not for me, then I will do a swatch for it just to make sure I'm getting the right gauge as a designer. So those are my two common reasons why I will do it, just to check to make sure I can actually do the stitch, and to check to make sure that the size that I'm picking for the person I'm making the garment for will actually fit. However, there are other reasons why one should consider doing it. Another reason is to test out the yarn. So let's say, for example, I decided to go with this one. I didn't really like the fabric, and then I would commit to this particular project with the fabric, and you will get all into it. It's not worth it. So doing a little swatch, whether big or small, gives you an idea about how the fabric would work and whether or not you as a knitter or crocheter would enjoy that particular process. Another reason, and Isabel Kramer had said this in one of the interviews that she was doing, either with, I want to say it was Knit Together with Kim and Jonna, but she flat out said, she said, think of swatching as yarn tasting. Like, you are testing it out, you're trying out different techniques with it to see if you like it, and if you do, you're going to go with it. And I'm like, that's spot on, because it really is yarn tasting. So you can do a yarn tasting swatch like I did, or you can also consider another reason why I like to do swatching is just to give myself the boost or the motivation to do the project. There are instances where I have committed myself to projects where I'm like, I don't want to do it, but I do want to do it. So sometimes doing a swatch will kind of rejuvenate my interest in a project that I had initially was super excited about, but for whatever reason lost interest in doing it. And so when it's like finally like I need a project to cast on, let me do a swatch just to see. So those are some of the reasons why I personally will swatch. However, for this new test knit that I'm doing right now, I did not do an additional swatch with the yarn I ended up selecting. So for this particular test knit, let me find my bag. I had to like, where's my project bag? I have too many project bags around this room. So, whew, as I said before, I was struggling with picking the yarn. I mean, I purchased this one. I didn't realize as soon as this dried that I didn't like it. And I was like, why didn't I wait until after the swatch was dried that whether or not to do it? Because I didn't enjoy making it. I was like, no. So anyway, now I'm stuck. Well, I shouldn't say I'm stuck. I still have like 70. No, I have more than. I have like a little over 80 days left to return this, whatnot. But I hate returning yarn. I don't know why. I just have a thing about it. And I can get even a store credit or my money back. And it's a great company. I've purchased too many skeins of yarn from Wool & Company. So it's definitely nothing towards them. It's just me being lazy about going to the store. And when I think about it, I just left Staples yesterday and I could have returned a yarn then, because I have no intention of using this particular yarn. And it's going to stay in my stash for a year or two and I'm end up giving it to somebody. But anyway, I digress. With all that said, I was on the fence about what this project is going to look like. So I finally decided on this particular yarn, which is a yarn I purchased online from Biscotte yarn. I've been calling it Biscotte, but then one of my peers who is also a knitter, she's like, I think it's called Biscotte. And I'm like, oops, my bad. But anyway, I bought this yarn from Biscotte yarn. Before I hold it up, it is their Louise Robust collection, excuse me. So this is the front, this is the front of the label. Let me just turn it. So as you can see, there's a tag information. It's a beautiful DK pure yarn, 90% superwash merino. And as you can see, this was a really nice in-between color because I love gray, but I am a big fan of purple and I want pink, and I just wasn't ready to commit to doing such bold colors in a whole sweater, even though I'm in love with this color. It even goes well with my nails. Like, come on. So that's another reasons why it's still here and not being shipped back. So I had a sweater quantity of this. Initially, I planned to use this yarn for my Salty Days sweater when I was test knitting for that, but I got very mad at the project for no reason whatsoever, and I blamed the yarn instead of myself. I used the ribbing needle. Let me actually grab the example of my mistake. So obviously when you do the ribbing, sometimes you go down a needle size. And so I use the ribbing needle to cast on. And as you can see, I made significant progress. And then I realized that I had the wrong needle when I was like, why is this so small? This is supposed to be large and this is the size of it. That's not going to fit my body. And then I realized because I was using the wrong needle. And it was like, come on, Rachel. Like it says clear as day what needle to use. It was nothing on the designer. It was 100% me. So I got mad at the yarn and blamed the yarn for the experience when it wasn't. It was my fault. So I put the yarn aside and I used a different one. I used a Cascade 220 for that particular sweater. Fell in love, loved it. Beautiful sweater. So this has been sitting in my stash for well over a year since that particular experience. And I finally decided to use it for my oatmeal sweater, and it's coming along pretty well. But the issue is that I'm afraid I'm about to start playing yarn chicken already. And the reason why is that I have 2 full skeins of this. So the pattern calls for 800 grams if you're for the size I'm doing, if you use fingering. But obviously, if I'm not using fingering, using DK, so it'll be 400 grams. So I did the math and I bought a little, I went on Amazon and I found a kitchen scale. I didn't use any of the ones that were recommended by various podcasters because I forgot which videos it was. But anyway, I bought a kitchen scale. It's somewhere in here. I lost the kitchen scale already. That's great. It's only been a week that I've had it. But anyway, took the kitchen scale, weighed all of the grams of yarn that I had, and the math showed that I have 479 grams of yarn, which is more than enough because the pattern calls for 400. So that extra 79 grams just gives me that little, if I want to get creative or if I have issues with the pattern. The other little row block that I'm running into is the fact that when I initially tried to use this yarn for a pattern, let me see if I have a skein of it in here. I had planned on, I'll just use the swatch. I had planned to hold it with mohair. So as you can see in this was the yarn held together with mohair because that's what the pattern calls for in the Salty Day. And I decided not to do that, but taking this apart has been a son of a biscuit. And so here is one ball, for example, of me taking it apart in order to get more yarn. So I'm determined not to just go on to Biscotte and buy more yarn because it's $32 a skein. And I don't want to buy more yarn if I don't need it. And I decided just to like pull it apart and wind it back up into balls. So I have like 3 of these extra ones just in case the 479 is not enough. So I'm in a good spot right now, and I still have a couple of other balls of yarn that I can pull apart. Like here's my little bag. Sorry, I was leaning out of camera, but here's my little bag. I can just sit here and that's what I do. I just lift it up and I hold the mohair on one hand and the yarn in the other, and I just pull apart that way. And then once it gets to a certain length, I will then start balling it up and just rinse and repeat until the yarn is fully separated. So I'm just going to keep doing that whenever I'm feeling like I'm running low on yarn. So let me show you the progress I made so far. I've been dealing with some pain in my elbow. I guess I have knitter's elbow, which is also commonly called tennis elbow, I believe, or golfer's elbow. But anyway, I have a little bit of a tendonitis that's happening right now in my elbow, and I have not been doing my yoga. I have not been drinking water as much as I should, and I'm certainly not taking breaks like the way I'm supposed to. So the pain or discomfort I'm feeling is 100% on me. Which is the reason why I'm trying to slow down a little bit. This test knit is not due until towards the end of March. And Miss Lindberg is not it has to be done type of designer. Like whatever you get done, you get done. Just continue to give feedback on the pattern in itself, which I have. Some of the things I've gone to give feedback on, it's already been given. The pattern's pretty straightforward. The only little hiccup was around the charts. And as soon as it was brought to her attention, she immediately corrected. And by the time I got to that chart, that was a little bit of a problem. I was able to implement the expectations with no issue whatsoever. So all in all, and I know she's a little overdue for her due date. So hopefully by the time I'm filming this, she's in labor to give birth to her beautiful new son. But anywho, this is the sweater. It's really a great pattern. Like I'm a little upset because like I said before, I'm trying to do more garments that actually fit my body. And the issue that I'm running into is that am either sizing down to going too far down in size or going too far up. So I'm more of a medium two. A large is too big, a medium is too small, but a medium two is right in between. And Petite Knits, for example, and Isabel Creamer, if I remember correctly, both of them do medium two patterns. And anytime I do medium two, it's fits. And again, I have not done a ton of patterns before, but for the few I have done, when I've had an option of doing the M2, it's been perfection. The issue that I'm running into, and I wish, like in hindsight, I wish I could have fixed this. If I were to ever knit this again, which it is a pattern I would, because I'm enjoying it that much, I would have added more stitches here to the side, which would have given it more width. So that will be one. So with the number of stitches that you cast on for large, you still end up doing the same chart. So, and it looks like it's an even number. So I would have cast on just an additional even amount that's not quite large, but not quite small, which would require to do math. But anyway, I'm going to see how much this grows after it's wet block. It's superwash yarn, so I know it's going to bloom out a little bit. So I've stretched it out and I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't look like it. So I also like how squishy the cables are looking. So all in all, I'm a little disappointed in myself that I am doing a size medium. I wish I cast on for a size large, but if I did that, then it would have been too oversized for me, because the finished bust for the size large is like almost 50 inches. And I am definitely nowhere near that. I am on a good day, I'm 39. On a bad day, bloating, eating too much, I'm 42. That's just the way my body works, whatnot. So I might do the same creative thing I did before. With the last test knit, I did a medium on the top, and then I ended up increasing enough stitches on the body for a large. So I might end up doing that too, because the chart that you're using, you use the same size chart for both medium and large. So I would be able to stay in pattern. I'm going to see, and worst case scenario, I can always gift the sweater, because that's what I did with sweater 19. I love the sweater. It was such a great knit. I had so much fun making it to a degree. It was taxing at times. However, it was just too cropped for my 42-year-old body. So I ended up giving it to my niece, and she wears it all the time. So I'm like, okay, so I can always gift her this, or gift one of my students as well, because they live when I give them one of my knitting patterns. So that test knit is going. As soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to pick back up with that. Just giving my hands a rest or whatnot. So yesterday only worked a little bit on projects. Same thing on Friday. I've been really doing small. The projects I'm currently working on, my small ones, where it's not feeling as strenuous on my body, have been my socks, because I am a sock knitter. I love knitting socks. And so this is a yarn I got while I was in Montreal, and I'm making a pair of socks for my friend, and it's coming along so pretty. I love this self-striping effect that's happening. I didn't know it was going to do that, but it is. Look how cool that is. I love it, and it's such a pretty color. And in addition, this yarn goes perfectly with the book cover for this for a new book by Rebecca Yarros. And the name of the book has escaped me, so forgive me for a moment. I'm going to look up on my phone to see if I can find the name of it. But because I'm participating in that, what is it called? It's a make-along with Denise DeSantis, where she's invited people to read their favorite book or read a book and then knit a pair of socks to go with it. And I was like, what a great idea. And because I love reading, and now you can do both. So this is the name of the book. Oh, sorry, the reflection is like coming up on it. Okay, yeah, hopefully you can see, like I see all my yarn. Okay, anyway, the book is called Hallowed, and I thought that these go pretty well together. I know that there's more gray and whatnot, but I thought they would, it was perfect cover. So I'm actually about to crack open that. I love every one of this woman's stories I have read. She's also the same person who wrote the, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on the title, but she's wrote one of the Fourth Wing, I think it's called. Yeah, it's called Fourth Ring, which went viral. It's such a great book. Like I've listened to it twice. As soon as the third book comes out, I'm going to listen to both books again and re-listen to that. It is I highly recommend. But her other books are just as entertaining, and I think that's one of my favorite things. Like you get emotionally invested in her characters in all the right ways, and it's really really entertaining. So I've made significant progress on the first sock, so I went ahead and decided to cast on for the second sock, and I didn't get very far with the cast on. As you can see, it's in its baby stages. But with this particular sock, I just wanted to make sure I don't lose my momentum. So I had already made two different cakes for it in order to make sure. So I only have about 2 inches left, according to the pattern, before I need a break for the heel. So I'm gonna do that. Is it okay? Before I have to break for the hills. So I'm really am excited about that and about this particular project is coming along really well. And it's been my work project. So sorry about that. Anytime I have like a meeting I need to sit through, or if I need just a moment to process, because there's so many thoughts that you have when you're a teacher. Because right now we're about to, as I mentioned before, I teach a semester, two semester long AP classes. And this semester I'm teaching a Push, which is AP US History, and AP African American Studies in one semester. The AP exam is the second week of May for both exams. So time crunch is happening. So with that said, there's all this thought that I have to put into my lessons to ensure that I'm teaching them the skill, the content, supporting their emotional learning situations, and supporting just being teenagers, because they're teenagers and they're just overgrown toddlers on some days, and legit overgrown toddlers, and it's really cute. And they like, yep. I'm like, you left your wrapper, like you finished your chip and you just left your wrapper there, and they're like, oh, I didn't see it. And I'm like, okay, just like a toddler would do. But it can be a little stressful. And so when I'm feeling a little stressed, I will sit down for like 5-10 minutes just to kind of like process some of the thoughts that I have. And I really find it to be really helpful because it resets me and I can go back into whatever lesson planning I'm doing or grading I'm doing and go back into the activity with a refreshed mind or whatnot, before I have to like say, okay, I'm out. Because a lot of people forget that teaching is a lot of brain power. Like you have to maintain and regulate your own emotions as well as supporting your students when they're dysregulated. At the same time, you have to support their families, and you're in a classroom with 20 or more students who have a variety of different needs. And it doesn't matter their social economics, it doesn't matter their racial identification, sexual gentrification, none of that. They are all various human beings with so many different needs, and you can never say that, oh, because you identify this is going to be your issue. No, nope, nope. So it's a lot that you have to put into your lesson planning, because you want to be respectful of the various beliefs that they have and how they are supporting themselves and their families. And you don't want to do anything or say anything that's going to cause division within their own personal lives as well. So a lot of thought goes into teaching, especially social science. However, there's these beautiful moments that you have with your students, which brings me to, I guess, somewhat of an acquisition. One of my students, who I didn't even know she was a knitter, she was so grade focused that all my conversations with her were always around grading, but she made me this little bag. Yes, I couldn't believe it. She did it herself. She came by. It was International Women's Day, and she's like, she wanted to celebrate me. Although I'm not from it, I'm just, but it was really nice. And so I have my my other ball of yarn in here with some socks I'm doing. These are socks I'm doing for myself. I'm listening to the Legendborn series, really another entertaining book, and this is almost identical to the cover, and so I thought like, hey, I'll cast this on. And although this is a DK weight yarn, so let me give you the yarn details. This is a hand-dyed yarn from Haynes house, and with this yarn, it's called the Community DK Posh. It's 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, where for every 100 grams you get 231 yards. So this is the colorway I picked. I purchased this yarn over a year ago. It's been sitting there looking at me, and I thought I would make a Oslo hat with it, but I'm a little hat out. I made so many hats last year that I've lost my interest in making them right now. I'm not really feeling it. And whenever I need to make a hat, like as a gift, I've been using my Sorrento knitting machine. The colorway that I have is called the Unicorn of Truth, which is such a great name. And for this skein, I paid $32 for it. So I know I will be able to eke out at least one pair of socks with this. And so I'm not using any particular pattern. I just went ahead and cast on the usual amount of stitches I need. And then I tried it on my foot to see if that was enough and it is. And it's been working out nicely. What I am going to do with this yarn, however, I am going to spend some quality time working on it. I thought it would be this weekend. I thought my husband and I would be going to the movies because my stepson was like, yeah, I'll babysit. He had made other plans. So we didn't end up going to the movies. But what I would like to do is to use the vanilla is the new black sock pattern to practice the heel on that, because I am using that pattern to make the socks I was just previously talking about, but I've never done the heel, and it's a really interesting heel, and I don't want to mess it up. So I might practice the heel on my DK socks, but I need to pick up the pace because I'm just past the point of my toes, and I still have at least 6 more inches to go. And it's working out really quickly. I literally have done that in just 3 minutes, not even. In the morning, I get addicted to knitting, as we all are, and I would come into my yarn room and I will see it and I will pick it up and just knit like one round, and then I'll go finish getting ready for my work day. Yeah, I know I have a little bit of a problem. So that was a recent acquisition slash gift from one of my very kind students. I really appreciate that. I don't think it's not a well kept secret that I'm obsessed with yarn. So that's the situation. However, the semi-final thing I wanted to talk about is, so that was what I'm currently working on, but I do still have the Copenhagen sweater. I went ahead and moved them to another set of needles because I had a fixed pair in the size, and because I want to use the cable for my pattern. So I put those on new needles, and I actually picked up my crochet blanket that I'm making my son. I ended up doing 5 rows yesterday. Oh no, this is a Copenhagen. So this is what the Copenhagen looks like. It's all scrunched up, so take it for what it's worth. What I do love about this particular beautiful pattern, wrong side, is that you're working on the collar at the same time as the rest of the sweater. So this is a top-down raglan sweater. You do your raglan increase. Let me see if I can show you. So here's my raglan. You can see it. Yeah, I hope so. So you're doing your raglan at the same time as you're doing your collar. And so the collar is not very wide. It looks like it's about less than a half an inch and whatnot. So it's a very small collar with that. But I love cardigans that have that level of construction. I do not like picking up stitches to knit that because I end up always having to do it at least twice because I either don't pick up enough stitches in the beginning or I pick up too few stitches in the end. So not my favorite way of knitting the button band on a cardigan, but I am really enjoying knitting that. It's just that particular project is not a priority. As soon as I finish my test knit and my gift socks for Marie, so I'm going to take a break from gift knitting as well as test knitting and just focus on some projects that I really wanted to do for myself that I've been thinking about for a long time. However, I mean, that's not 100% true because in this lovely bag is a blanket I'm making my son. So my youngest is the only child that has not gotten a true blanket. Everybody and their mother, even strangers, have gotten a blanket from me, but he unfortunately never got one. Because when I was pregnant with him, my last trimester, around the second week before I gave birth, I started to develop a depression. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. And so my OB explained to me you can develop postpartum while pregnant, and that happened to me. And so I dealt with my postpartum from 2 weeks before birth up until about when my son was about two and a half is when my mind and my body finally recovered from that hormonal experience. So in that particular time, I just was not doing the things that tend to help me cope through my emotions, which includes crocheting and knitting. So he didn't get a proper blanket when he was a baby. So I'm trying to make up for it 7 years later. And I did make a blanket, but it wasn't intended for him. It was just a random blanket I had made. So I would use that when he was a baby, but that got lost at his daycare center and just never found the time to make him one. And I noticed that it was really random. I had noticed that my stepson and my first son, first biological son, both had numerous blankets, and I made them, but I never made one for Angelo. And I was like, I need to do something about that. So this is Angelo's blanket. And I'm doing a corner to corner pattern. I've done corner to corner is one of my favorite ways to do blankets now. I do still enjoy doing. Hang on, Angelo. I do still I do still prefer to do the granny square in the round, and I'm trying to see if I have one version of that. Yeah, here it is. So here is an example of my granny square, and this is a 4-color version of it where you pick up here and then you drop the yarn and you pick up new yarn and you drop the yarn and you pick up there as you're going along with it. I definitely enjoyed doing that particular swatch and doing blankets like that. But the corner to corner is my favorite. That's my favorite way of doing a blanket because you can do so many different things. You can even do graft-ins where you can graft things on there, or you don't have to do that. You can do something completely different. So for his blanket, red is his favorite color. And I have this, I know this is more of a like a dark red color, but it's very similar to one of his Spider-Man suits that he loves to wear. And I went on Amazon and I found these little Spider-Man iron-on patches. And so I know not to iron on acrylic, so my thought is to maybe stitch it on there. I got to get creative. I'm going to sit there with myself and think about how to attach it, but my goal is to add some form of a Spider-Man image to this particular blanket. But red is his favorite color, and so I'm glad that I have that on there. In worst case scenario, I can always double stitch or put an A on there because I do know how to crochet A's into fabrics. I can either make a letter or I can just weave it in with the pattern. So we'll see with that. But I have a long way to go with that particular pattern. That's not going anywhere. My goal is to have that finished by his birthday. I want to give that to him for his 8th birthday, since I missed his 7th birthday because I was at a work-related event. So that's what's happening with those two particular items. The Copenhagen is really still in hibernation, whereas Angelo's blanket, the goal of it is just to work on it. If I can do 5 rows every weekend, I feel like I can complete it by the time his birthday rolls around next September. However, I do have some knitting plans in the future. My goal is to finish my sweater number 20, and my goal is to also cast on either a t-shirt or a bracelet length sweater. So those are 2 things I'm considering. However, I wanted to talk about in these final moments, if you're still with me, I'm so glad that you stayed along, but there are 2 things I wanted to touch base on, and it comes to time management. So I've talked several times about my experience with the Weekender Light. The Weekender Light is probably one of the best written patterns I've ever interacted with. It is definitely well written. That's not the issue. The issue is time management, and the issue is me. So with that particular pattern, the issue, I'm going to say issue a lot. The problem started right from the beginning. It started with underestimating how much yarn I had. I had assumed I did not have enough yarn one afternoon. Sitting there, just got this idea, I don't have enough yarn. It became obsessed with it. Ended up using a variety of different yarns to complement and to save face. Ended up having to start from scratch all over again on the pattern because the fabric wasn't was not coming out the way it was supposed to. Then I finally decided to just move forward with the pattern after frogging that, to move forward with the pattern with the yarn that my sister-in-law purchased, because that was the yarn she purchased and whatnot. And I'm like, and if I run out of yarn, I could always purchase it, because I found the designer, so it wasn't like that wasn't an option. The issue is I had just had a mental block about it. I don't know why. So as you all know, I did the hem, had made the entire body, and realized it was too small. Had to frog the whole thing, spent a good hour frogging it, and did what I needed to do to recake it. So the yarn was recaked, it was repurposed, and I got it back into these beautiful balls of yarn. And the issue was, it's like, okay, I need to start it again. But I was upset. I was really upset with not only with myself, but with my yarn, and just, it was just frustrating. And it was one of those things, is like why I don't like doing gift knitting as much as I used to, because I want it to be perfect. And there's no such thing as perfection. And there's mistakes that happens, and it's about the love and the intention that you're giving your individual. And sometimes we lose that focus. And if we just manage our expectations as well as our time, we will be able to successfully complete those gift knits the way they're supposed to. And I wish I was thinking that and had embraced that mantra at that particular time. But I lost about 3 weeks of knitting on that particular sweater because I was having such a tantrum at that time. But I finally found the nerve and the courage to cast back on. And I made the hem in one weekend on driving to and from New York with my family. And I wasn't driving, my husband was driving, I was knitting. But anyway, and I ended up working it up, and it was just taking forever. And little things would happen. Drop a stitch and it will ladder all the way down. Sometimes when you drop a stitch, it will only ladder like one or two. But for whatever reason, even though this is 100% wool and I was using alpaca, and it wasn't that, it's not a slippery wool by no means. It just will just keep laddering. And I'm like, why? Why? But it wouldn't, but it was still sticking together at the same time. Oh, it was maddening. It took forever just to crochet it back up and to put it back on the needles. And sometimes I would use a knitted needle to do that. So the laddering was happening all the time. Then when that wasn't happening, every time I thought I had did enough length, I would find that, oh my goodness, the body wasn't long enough. So I was like, are you kidding me? So I still have another inch to go. I thought I only had an inch to go, but it turns out I have another 2 inches to go. So that particular thing, and it comes down to using the right measuring tape and making sure you're reading the pattern to see how much length that you need to do. And then the part that almost broke me was the shoulder shaping. I did it perfectly on one side, but I didn't do it right on the other side because I lost my place, and I could not figure out like how much I needed to go. And I was like, this looks right. And I ended up reshaping the shoulder. And then when I finished, I noticed that one part of it was a little higher than the other. And I thought about it and thought about it. I was like, I can't frog this sweater again. I cannot. And this was after I finished the sweater. So I couldn't go back and frog it again. I decided that when I was wet blocking it, not to stretch it out. So when I finished the sweater, I did the kitchenaire. You do the 3 needle bind off, to join the front and the back. And one side came out gorgeous and the other side naturally was too tight. Had to pull that out again and do it again. So it finally came out the way it was supposed to. I did the sleeves. The sleeves came out the length. I even tried it on. I was like, yes, thank goodness. If it's past my, I'm taller than my sister-in-law, so I knew if I had to get it to this particular part of my arm in order for it to fit hers, because I already measured my arm against her. So the length of the sleeve was perfect. The other concern was around, will I have enough yarn to do a full length of it? So again, this comes down to managing your time and managing your expectations, because when we're in such a rush to finish a project, sometimes we assume that we don't have enough of something, or we assume that we need to do these two different steps. We make a lot of assumptions when we are when we're rushing to complete a project. And there's a variety of different reasons why we rush to complete a project, which I'm not going to go into today. So what I will say is that I had enough yarn, and I did not need to use the supplement yarn I was using. Fortunately, the supplement yarn I was using blended really well, because I used that same supplement yarn in the ribbing for the shoulders. So that way it would just blend right into the arms. So it looks like an intentional design. It actually came out looking really nice, but I didn't necessarily need it to do that. I just assumed that I wouldn't have enough, and I didn't want to go through the stress of waiting for the yarn to show up and prolong having this particular project on the needles, because I was ready to be done with it. And that happens where you just want to be done with something. You don't want to be bothered with, like I have that experience with teaching. I don't want to be bothered with teaching this particular topic. Like the unit I'm on right now for AP IFAM, and I'm like, okay, we've been going over this for a minute, and it's the longest unit, so it does take forever. And I'm just like, I'm done with this particular unit. I'm ready to go into the other 2 units, because A, the semester's almost over, and B, I just want something new. So I had enough yarn. So I finished the sweater. I wet block it. I let it sit in water for a good hour, take it out, wring it out, and then I use the towel method to wring out some more. And usually, whenever I wet block my garments, and again, I know I haven't done a lot, but I've done enough. I tend to stretch it out to the schematics, yeah, schematics. You know what I'm trying to say, schematics of the pattern. This time I was like, I didn't want to do that. I liked the shape that it was, and I was afraid if I did it any bigger, it would be too big on her because it's alpaca and alpaca can grow. So I didn't use it that way. I just instead just made it fit the perfect box that it is, because this is a very boxy sweater. So I had it all laid out on the floor, and hopefully I'm interlating some images of it. So I have it all laid out on the floor, and I'm just like, you did it, Rachel. Be proud of yourself. I'm doing my little black girl magic dance, really proud of myself, doing my thing. Then I realized that when I was doing the 3 needle bind off, that I forgot one of the stitches, and it had lovely, sorry to ladder, and it was getting to the point where it's about to hit the body, and I was like, no. So I found one of my little trusty little stitch markers, and I looped it in that just to keep it from laddering some more, because I know my children are going to come in here, and I told them not to, but they still come here anyway. So I did that, and I waited till it was fully dried. And when it was fully dried, I just took some scrap yarn, and I magically was able to fix the laddering as well as weaving it in and tie it properly. So you can't even tell. But as soon as I fixed that, I folded it up neatly into, I always use one of those organza bags, and whenever I'm gift knitting, so I folded it up immediately into one of those bags and gave it to my sister-in-law. Like I was like, what day are you at work that I can meet with you? Because I don't want this sweater anymore in my house. Like, take it. I don't want to ever see it again. And so she got it. So again, hopefully I'm inserting a picture of it. And if you can't see any of the pictures that I'm referencing, or any of the garments I'm referencing, this is all on my Ravelry page. You can check it out there. But she was able to get it, and it fits her beautifully. And she styled it gorgeous. And I was like, wow, that was a really beautiful sweater I made. I'll never make it again, but it was a really beautiful sweater. And it is no shade whatsoever on Andrew Amari's pattern. This was 100% on me. It was about the process. It was a process of that particular garment. It had nothing to do with her, had nothing to do with the yarn, it had nothing to do with anyone. My sister-in-law wasn't even pressuring me like, Rachel, it's been since October, where's my sweater? Like, none of that was happening. This was 100% me setting unrealistic expectations for myself and putting unnecessary pressure on myself on a project that didn't need it, that just didn't need it. So trying something a little different with my current projects, because that was a really tough one. That took some time. So the last thing I wanted to share with you all, to help me with my recovery, I'm doing. So I mentioned the sock knit along that I'm doing, but I'm also going to knit my first shawl for 2024. I haven't made a shawl since 2022. Yeah, because I sent it to my mother, so that was a lot. I gave it to her for her birthday or something, but that was the last shawl I have made. So I decided that I want to make another one, because I love crocheting shawls, and I've made 2 or 3 crochet shawls since finishing that one, but I haven't made a knit one. So one of my friends from my knitting night convinced me to do a Helen Stewart shawl, and I've heard nothing but wonderful things about Helen Stewart's patterns, and podcasters galore have said nothing but positive things about her design. So, and I've seen her other shawls, and I'm like, yeah, I'm down for it. And already 300 at the time when I purchased my pattern, or access to the pattern, because the clues haven't released yet. By the time of this particular video, 345 people have joined in on it. And I was like, dang, like, people are already like that excited about it. I guess it's like a Stephen West situation. So I'm really excited about that. I have my yarn to pick out. The pattern calls for 4 skeins of fingering weight yarn, and y'all know I got plenty of those. And so one of my favorite new hand dyers that I've come across due to listening to Needles at the Ready, it's called Yarn Cafe. And so not to they I don't know if you guys remember, but several podcasters were doing this thing where they were encouraging people to offer their patronage at those who may not have had a best-selling experience at Wool and Folk. So Yarn Cafe was one of those vendors that was there, and I have been buying their yarn a lot since then, and I love that. I bought not only did I buy this, but I bought this amazing, adorable Progress Keeper from their yarn store as well. This one is obviously Black Panther, and so I'm gonna do this color, and this is all 100% superwash polyworthy. I love the way it feels on my arm. This is their Cafe Aulette fingering yarn. So these are my 3 colors. I'm actually supposed to have 4, so here's my 4th one, and this is also that. And I was on the fence about like what yarn, what to do with this particular yarn, this little beautiful ice blue. I just loved it, and I knew I needed to do something with it. And I had considered using it for color work. I considered it for other things, but because it's just a really beautiful yarn, and it is so soft. It's too beautiful for a hat. It needs a little bit more of a showstopper. And this Helen Stewart pattern is perfect. I knew as soon as I read what yarn you needed to use that this was going to be one of my colors. I just needed other colors to go with it. And then I realized that I had bought 3 other skeins in a similar color family and yarn family, and I just thought that this would pair so well together. So like you get these lovely little pop. I think that's going to make an amazing shawl, and I can see myself wearing that in the winter and fall here, whatnot. So that's in my Stephen and Penelope bucket bag. I probably will use my Neighborhood Fibers bag because it's a bigger bag, but this is fine for now in terms of keeping it. So that's, let me actually get my Progress Keeper because I will use this Progress Keeper for that knit along. And done. So that's it for me. Wow, I wanted to make sure I did this within 45 minutes, and I did it. Go me. I'm super excited about the upcoming projects I have on my needles and hook, and I hope to do some more crochet projects. I'm looking all around. I want to crochet another sweater, and I also want to crochet another what is that, scarf. So hopefully I will be able to get that on my hook. When I do crochet items, it's really random, and I do it so quickly that by the time I'm ready to film, it's done and given away to somebody. So it's probably going to happen again. But anyway, I digress. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have any questions, concerns, hit me up. I am Ray282320 on Instagram. I think I'm going to put it into the description. And I'm also on Ravelry as well. I'm under, my Ravelry name is RRW285. So you can message me there as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day.